Hello, STEM Nation. Jeff here, and welcome to episode number 8 of STEM on Fire, where we interview practicing professionals in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math. Let's start by thanking our sponsor, Audible, who is offering a free audiobook. Just head over to STEMOnFirebook.com. That's STEMOnFirebook.com to get your free audiobook. Now let's get fired up with our guest, Bond, and I hope our chat will help ignite your passion towards a STEM career. Bond Calloway graduated in 1984 from Auburn University in Alabama with a Bachelor of Science degree in chemical engineering. He started as a process and research engineer for 5 years at DuPont before moving to the Savannah River National Laboratory company as a project and process engineer, and now is the Associated Laboratory Director of Clean Energy Research. If work doesn't keep him busy enough, he has been heavily involved in the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and in 2017 was elected president of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. Congratulations, Bond. Take a moment to fill in any gaps and share a bit of your personal life.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I think you got my bio correctly. I'm a little different than most people. I went to work for DuPont, and they were running the Savannah River site in '84, and DuPont left the Savannah River site. It's a Department of Energy site that is managed by companies. DuPont built it for the government. And I'm lucky that I never really had to change jobs. I essentially, the companies change, but the location doesn't change. And so you just continue on. So I have a little bit different career than most these days. And I've been lucky that the site offers, quite an opportunity for people in STEM fields. You can, basically have a full career there for many, many years. So I've been lucky in that sense, and I'm no different than the typical person that's in engineering these days. I have a family, a daughter, son, and a wife who's a food journalist. She's done quite well in that area, and gotten locally famous anyways. And she worked for Viking Range as their online chef, so we obviously enjoy cooking. I can say that the American Institute of Chemical Engineers has given me quite an opportunity, and we'll get into that today, where I've leveraged both my passion for chemical engineering and my normal career together to form a larger effort.
Thanks, Bond, for that overview and filling in a couple of gaps there. For somebody that's not familiar with chemical engineering, can you give some examples of career opportunities, and then we'll delve into your area of expertise?
Basically, when I started out, I was looking for something to do in high school, and my dad worked for DuPont, and I was good at chemistry, so I said, why don't you think about a chemical engineering job? So I just got right into chemical engineering and didn't give it much thought. In 1979, they had the 3 Mile Island nuclear incident, and I was a freshman in college. I lived next to a guy that was from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and of course, the local paper in Oak Ridge was full of information about the event, because the Oak Ridge National Laboratory was located nearby, and a lot of people were curious about it. And so he and I ended up writing a letter to the editor. It wasn't the local paper, it was the university paper. People were starting to debate the facts of nuclear power. So we took information from the Oak Ridger and what we could get from the library, and responded back to the antis, and said nuclear was still the way to go. But what I realized through that was that there was a huge problem area in nuclear waste, and 2 or 3 years later, DuPont eventually offered me a job to go work at the Savannah River site, where we process and clean up nuclear waste from the Cold War. And then we also continue to produce tritium for nuclear weapons. And all of those jobs are chemical engineering related. A chemical engineer is the guy who figures out how to actually manufacture chemicals. They do lots of other things as a result of that, but chemicals are all around you. I mean, just about everything in your house, any plastic, any material starts out somewhere in a chemical process and is eventually made. Even a window or a wall material in your house has some chemical property that is added to it. and essentially it's all around you, whether you're a farmer using it to fertilize your crops, or you're a food engineer that's concerned with adding the right chemicals to food so they can make it safe. There's just about endless different industries that use it.
Yeah, it sounds like chemical engineering is everywhere, and I think if somebody has a knack for chemistry and likes kind of the putting it all together, chemical engineering would be a great career for them.
That's right. I mean, but you can also, delve into more basic research as a chemical engineer and discover new materials and go into medicine in those areas. There's quite a number of chemical engineers that are concerned with making new chemicals for your body, as well as new materials that, would help, aid in sickness and disease.
Yeah, thanks, Bon, for that overview. Let's dig in now into what is your area of specific expertise?
My particular area, of course, I spent about 15 years building a nuclear waste processing facility. It's a $3 billion effort on the Savannah River site, so I'm of course, very familiar with that. That led to a job inside the laboratory, which is located on the site, doing, both basic research and applied research, to the end of making, more efficient nuclear waste processing facilities. And, I got into really trying to understand the properties of nuclear waste as they flow through pipes, right? So how thick they are, how sticky they are, what causes them to be thicker or thinner, what particles, you can add to them, or chemicals you can add to them that would make them thicker or thinner, as well as, delving down into the, microscopic scale, understanding the interactions between those particles. So I did that for a number of years, and then, as time goes on, the lab changed and decided to have an energy portfolio, and I was pretty good at, not only doing the research, but figuring out how to get money to do that research. So they asked me to start a business in renewable energy.
So starting a business inside of a business.
That's right. I mean, national laboratories, there are 17 of them within the United States, and they do a variety of things. They, are concerned with nuclear weapons. They're concerned with environmental remediation. They have a huge basic science portfolio, but they do basic research in all sorts of subjects. And they also do energy research. So all the national labs report to the Department of Energy, and so it's concerned with, both handling weapons, waste, conducting science, and doing energy research. So when you look at, the opportunities for research, they're in those four basic areas. We didn't have an energy portfolio, so they said, as a national lab, we needed to have one, and engineers being what they are, they have skills that can be applied not only to, nuclear weapons and waste, but also to energy research. So we went off and did that, and today we do solar energy research, we do hydrogen research. We have a fairly extensive electrical grid research program that runs through my department. And then we also have nuclear fuel cycle, which is how to make nuclear fuel more efficiently. And we also do fusion energy research.
Yeah, fusion energy. That's, if we can figure that out, I think that solves a lot of the energy problems going forward.
Well, we'll see. They're building a multi-billion-dollar fusion reactor in France, and we're a part of that program. And that stems from our expertise in processing tritium for nuclear weapons. Fusion energy is made with a reaction between tritium and deuterium. And so since we understand a lot about tritium, we're a part of that program.
Oh, that's really interesting. Was not aware of that. I thought fusion was just kind of a pipe dream and not a whole lot going on there. So appreciate that insight.
Oh no, it's a big program.
Could you describe, Bon, what a typical workday would look like, or maybe a work week would look like for, somebody entering into the profession as a chemical engineer?
Typically chemical engineers do several things. They can get into sales, they can get into research, they can get into what I'd call plant support or production type jobs. They can get into design, and then a lot of chemical engineers go into the finance world, right?
Into the finance world. That's kind of intriguing. What do you mean by that? Into the finance world as a chemical engineer?
Some chemical engineers leave chemical engineering and they go to Wall Street. And any STEM professional, for that matter, can get into the finance world. A lot of them go get a master's to do that, but some of them go right into it. We have several chemical engineers that are part of the American Institute of Chemical Engineering that are essentially venture capital, and they help work with companies to start up or work with mid-sized companies to merge, and because they understand the chemical industry. Now, typically, you don't jump right into that. It's something that comes much later, but people that go into the Wall Street business go right into financial analysis and use their STEM education to do that. But the typical chemical engineer that graduates with a bachelor's of science, most of them go into the plant support, production type jobs, and that's what we would do with them here at Savannah River. They might also go into a design job as an entry-level position.
Yeah, and I think that's what I like about these STEM careers is you're not pigeonholed into one specific avenue. You can take and branch out into many different directions, into sales, into management, even into the financial world. So that's pretty cool. That's what I like about STEM careers is you can do anything you want with them. Bon, we're gonna get really specific here. We're gonna go into an area that you're really fired up about in chemical engineering, and where do you see chemical engineering headed?
So, like most manufacturing industries, we have a couple major problems. One of them is we always face competition here in the U.S. and abroad with whoever, and then we also face the fact that most people that are in manufacturing these days are aging, right? So my industry, the basic business of Savannah Riverside is no different. People came to work here in the 80s. We had a group come in the 50s. When they aged out, we hired a bunch of people in the 80s. Now we're aging out, so we're trying to hire new people. So getting people to come into manufacturing or research or any of these fields that are STEM related is more difficult than it used to be. And principally because, while they pay pretty well, you face competition with the industries like you're in. So with Intel and, Silicon Valley, they can tend to pay a little higher. Certainly people go into the financial industry for the same reasons. And so lots of times, getting people to go into the, more traditional manufacturing, research-oriented positions is tough. So, what we did at Savannah River in collaboration with the American Institute of Chemical Engineers was we went after a government grant, the Florida Manufacturing Institute, and that's called RAPID. It's an acronym that, basically stands for Rapid Deployment of Process Intensification Technology. And by process intensification, it's learning how to reduce the size of a given piece of equipment or plant and get the same production rate out of it. And then it's also got a large educational component to it. So that government grant was $70 million over 5 years, and it was matched with a little over $260 million of private investment. And so the lab, in collaboration with 34 universities and 75 companies, are going to work towards advancing technology and education. So this is part of a broader program by the United States. They actually have established about 14 of these manufacturing institutes, and they're in all different fields. The administration, along with Congress, recognized they need to put an investment, in manufacturing. We're lucky that our oil prices are low, so that, helps everybody in the manufacturing world stay competitive. And we're going to, double down on that particular natural effect by using government investment to spur innovation in manufacturing.
So it sounds like the field of chemical engineering is bright out there, and there's a lot of opportunities, especially in the manufacturing side.
Because the oil prices have drastically reduced as a result of the shale gas revolution, manufacturing is coming back onshore, and people are starting to build bigger plants, and so we have a whole new generation of opportunity as a result of that.
Yeah, thanks, Bond, for that. We're gonna switch gears here a little bit, and we're gonna move into an aha moment you've had. So, if you could take us to a moment in time, Bond, of an incredible aha moment you've had at work or your personal life, and tell us the story and how you turn that aha moment into success.
There's always a few of those in a 30-year career, but thinking back on an aha moment, sort of mid-career. We were having problems. We had just started up the plant that I was building for the first 10 years of my career, and it was having all sorts of problems with production. We had hired a couple consultants to help us, and they suggested that we used a neural network piece of software to analyze the process. And what it really does is it looks at the inputs and outputs that you can measure and tells you which ones are the most important. Without really a whole lot of work. You just have to feed it data, and it does the work for you. But that technology, really was just getting started in the 90s, and it's now resulted in what you call data analytics and big data. But the aha moment for us was, convincing everyone that, hey, these were the most important variables, and using that particular piece of software to do it, that led to an understanding by myself that I enjoyed doing more than just, understanding a process and being a production engineer, that I like to delve a little bit deeper into things. And as it turns out, we published a paper on that work, and the lab hired me as a researcher as a result of that. So, from my point of view, the understanding that what I really like to do is investigate new things and always do something new was the aha moment for me, as opposed to, being the guy that, every day comes to work at 7, leaves at 5. I was more the type of person that wanted to be a little bit more innovative, work a little bit differently, and think differently about something.
Yeah, and I think that's important, STEM Nation. If you got to think differently when you're in your career, and those are the folks that really advance. If you just come in and just hang out, do what you're supposed to do, you'll have a good career, but if you think differently, you're going to provide so much value to your employer, and they're going to appreciate that, and they'll reward you for that. Now let's turn our attention into a topic that's probably front and center on a lot of the STEM Nation out there, as they're juniors, seniors in high school, and they're going to be heading off to college. So Bond, if you could take us to a time when you were 18 years old, heading off to college, what is something that you wish you knew back then, or even knew back then, that you think would help our STEM Nation?
Well, we didn't have the internet back then that would allow you to, search and say, what are the jobs that chemical engineers do, right? And I'm not even sure that that even if you were 18 years old and the internet can answer lots of questions, that you would be trained enough to really, research the question. And what I would say is that, early on in your, as a freshman in whatever degree field you're in, is try to pick up the skill to learn about something new and really try to answer the questions on where you're headed. because you just don't realize all the opportunity that you can have with a STEM education. I had no idea that somebody in STEM could go to Wall Street, right?
Right, I agree.
I didn't, while I knew my dad was in tech sales, I knew that you could go into tech sales, but I didn't really understand what a chemical engineer did. So those people who get a work opportunity, I was lucky enough that the co-op experience I had a research experience, I had three plant experiences, so I could at least see those, and then I had, the sales experience. But just because you go through 4 years as a chemical engineer doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do that, right? You can explore a completely different field. And so I think the easiest way to do it is to try to find somebody that's more experienced than yourself to ask these questions to. And that's why the STEM Nation is an interesting endeavor, because it offers you the opportunity to engage with different people that have different experiences. Most people in STEM don't realize they can join a national society as an undergraduate, and that offers opportunity as well to interact with people that are 30 years of the career, that you can basically ask that question, what would you do if you were me? And trust me, anybody that's if you're asking that question as a freshman, that would really help you.
Yeah, STEM Nation, Bon hit on a couple of things there. The co-op positions, those are opportunities during college where you actually take a semester and a summer off during school, and you go work for 7 or 8 months. And in those 7, 8 months, you can really delve into something versus just a summer internship, and get involved with the societies. You can join these societies as college students and probably even as high school students, and get involved with that community and ask questions. We got one forum here is the podcast, where we're going to be interviewing professionals that can give you some insights, but take some initiative and go ask some questions yourself to these organizations. As these students leave college, right, they got the skills of learning and sticking to it and some tenacity to get through these curriculums, because they're challenging. I went through computer engineering, and it was tough. It was a lot of work. I spent a lot of time in the library when my friends were out, goofing around, and it was definitely well worth it. But transitioning into the work environment, what are some extra skills or attributes you think these STEMers will need to launch a successful career?
Well, I think the opportunity to present in front of people is something that's very important, that you should do as early as possible in your career. I think they're building more of that into the curriculum for STEM, but trying to stand up and speak to people in a constructive manner and getting your point across is very important. And then I think the other thing is to widen your field of view a bit beyond your STEM education, and try to take courses that are as much as you can, outside if you're in biology, take them in, some other field, so that you can get an idea of what you really want to do. I took economics as an elective, and I really liked it. So I took another course in my senior year, and I remember taking that. It was the second course, so it's usually a sophomore course. And I remember the score coming back, and the guy, I made a high score on the test, and the guy said, consider a career in economics. And I liked economics enough that I probably should have, but I was in my last quarter of chemical engineering, and I didn't think to myself, well, I could go off and get a master's in economics, and this is what I could do with it, right?
Yeah, it'd be tough to to make a course correction like that. But you have the economics background, and you can utilize that in your career right now as you form new businesses and figure out the ROI within that business to make it successful.
A course correction is best made early in your career. I mean, I see a lot of people that graduate with a biology degree and they get stuck, right? There's not a lot you can do with that, and it would be better off. You'd be better off going back to school and incurring debt to further that STEM education, either in that field or in another one, than you would be to just terminate with that biology degree. I'm not saying that you can't do well there, but the vast majority of people struggle.
Yeah, you have to find a passion, right? Because if you don't have a passion for what you do, life is going to be a drag. But if your passion is something that isn't marketable out in the real world, you really do have to think about that and go, I got to find something that I'm passionate about that is something that the world wants and is willing to pay for so you can make a living. So you really need to think about that as you're researching your career opportunities. Bond, are you ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
All right, let's give this a go. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So I was coming into the lab and my boss said to me, "You can do anything you want as long as you bring in money." And it was sort of a backhanded piece of advice, but it spurred me on to develop a program for myself and go out and fund research. What it was really trying to tell me is, if you don't get funding, then you're going to have to go back to the plant. And so that's not something I wanted to do. Now he was to regret that advice that he gave me, because when I did finally bring in enough money, he wanted me to do something, and I said, "I don't want to do that. You told me I could do anything I wanted to." And he goes, "Yeah, I wish I had never told you that." But that was a really good piece of advice. He was basically telling me that research is important and doing the research is important, but it's just as important to go out and get funding in your areas of interest.
Thanks. Hey, a personal habit. What kind of personal habits do you have that contributes to your success?
So I live by my phone these days because I travel a lot. So, making sure that all my meetings are in my, iPhone and iPad calendar is 100% the way I stay on track. So.
Yeah. So this next question of your favorite internet resource or phone app, heck, yours might just be the phone is your favorite internet resource or application.
I like, frankly, I like TripAdvisor because my number one thing is to try to figure out some healthy place to eat on the road, and I use TripAdvisor to do that.
Okay. Yeah, TripAdvisor. I would have never guessed that. Hey, one book. If you could recommend one book for STEM Nation, what would it be and why?
So I like Daniel Yergin's The Quest, Energy Security and the Remaking of the Modern World. So Daniel Yergin works for IHS, which is IHS Global Insights does energy research for the financial industry and for others. They do quite a bit of things, but Daniel Yergin is an economist that runs a portion of IHS. And in that book, he really gives you a good overview of how the energy world works.
All right. Hey, STEM Nation, for you chemical engineers that may have an interest in that, go pick up that book and give it a go, and that might excite you even further into the chemical engineering career. Bond, as we wrap up here, can you share a parting piece of guidance for STEM Nation, and then we'll say goodbye?
I think if you get into the STEM field and you actually have a passion for it, that a national society is a way to widen your network and horizons, and it's certainly done that for me. I've been able to, not only just volunteer my time as president, but also leverage the capabilities of a society to bring people together, for a common cause. And that's something that most people that go into they know that it's a coursework they have to do, but the professional societies do offer that networking opportunity that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Networking is so important. I think once you get your first job, and even helping with your first job is your network. You're going to find positions and opportunities in your network. So start networking early in your career. Start doing it in college, maybe in high school, start networking. And I think that will help you launch your career. And with that, Bond, we'll say goodbye.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today with Bond. Head on over to STEMonfire.com to subscribe to the email list to keep up with the latest happenings. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Tune in next week where we talk with Brett, who is an industrial engineer focused on analytics. Until next time, I hope this chat has taught